Good evening, everybody. It's starting to look more like spring in the southern plains and even out in the central plains. And we got the drone working and getting some good video from that, so I'm looking forward to some of the first storm footage that we get from that airborne vantage point. So pretty clear in Texas, a little bit of cumulus, and you can see it's a little bit pancaked. That's due to that capping inversion that's starting to set up. We've got the EML in place and the tropical moisture coming northward. And let's check out the charts and bring that up. Gulf is open. Moisture is starting to flow in. We can see dew points in the lower to mid 60s down there in south central Texas. 60-degree isodrosotherm runs from about around Sanderson all the way up to Eastland, about to Oklahoma City, and then it looks like that arcs back down across Dallas and then down towards Beaumont. So that's our moisture region right there, and the axis runs pretty much along Interstate 35 in Texas and on up into Oklahoma. Do we have a dry line? Well, let's take a look. Now, a lot of people will tend to look at the convergence of the wind field, and sometimes that will work, but what we have to look for is the moisture gradient. Some people also look for specific values like a dew point of 45 or 50, and in some of the older literature that is in indication you can use to find the dew point. However, again, we should be using the moisture gradient. For example, right here in the Texas Panhandle, we go from 29 all the way up to 58. That's fairly substantial. So that pretty much marks where the dry line is, and we can bring that down through Lubbock and then down towards around Wink. And the dry line also extends further north. Got a couple fronts up in that area. Looks a little bit like June. That's a very common location in the early summer for the fronts, so we tend to get triple points up in this area, and that's kind of what we have today. So the dry line runs from the Texas Panhandle to about Dodge City, and then we go from, let's see, it looks like a 34, I think, there at Goodland, to 56. That's probably going to indicate where the dry line is, so something like that right there. So just north of North Platte, southward to about Wakini, and down towards Canadian Texas. So what this is showing us is this is all tropical air. It's not very rich at all. Dew points only in the 40s and 50s. Whereas the air out to the west, this air here, this is all post-dry line air. Very dry, almost dry adiabatic lapse rates. Tends to be also clear, sometimes raising dust. And then up to the north we've got the polar front. That's what all that is right there. So those are the three air masses, and you can see that they do come together in Nebraska. Now the dew points in that area are kind of low. Looks like we got a range of about 48 up to about 55, but that 55 is significant, and that's given us enough instability for some thunderstorms. So this is the North Platte radar. North Platte located right here, the radar site, up towards the Sand Hills. And we've got a couple thunderstorms, well, actually a line of thunderstorms, all the way from South Dakota down to about Broken Bow. So which one would you chase if you were on this one? Well, they've all got severe thunderstorm warnings. And we got a few severe ones in this region right here. But when you look at this, you would probably opt towards the tail end storm. And right now, that looks to be probably the best storm. It's got a little bit of a curved shape, kind of reminiscent of a weak hook echo. But this is probably a multi-cell storm. And we can see the gradient of the reflectivity field out ahead of it, and that indicates we've probably got the updraft right in that area right there. Let's take a look at some of the higher tilts. You can see it jump back there. That's because we have an older frame. And it just updated. We can kind of see the updraft in that area, kind of forming a little bit of a notch. And that's at an altitude of about 10,000 feet. Then going up to the higher tilts, see a little bit of maybe overhang, but it doesn't look especially severe. Let me give you a cross-section going from northwest to southeast. And there you go. Yeah, it's got a little bit of a weak echo region in this area here. That's kind of marking the location of the updraft right there. And then this area here, that's the downdraft region. So we're not seeing any significant severe weather at this time. Maybe by tomorrow things will come together a little bit better, and we'll have some things to look at there. Let's take a look at the large scale pattern. This is the thickness and isobars. We can definitely see a gradient out there on the west coast. So some of that cold air up there in Oregon and Northern California has spread southeastward. It appears the leading edge of that cold air mass is somewhere in Arizona. At first glance, maybe something like that right there. And it appears that connects up towards Nebraska and South Dakota. We've got that old receding high across the eastern U.S. right there. So that's about to head out into sea and kind of merge with the Bermuda High, which has taken shape. And then up to the north, it appears we have another cold air outbreak. Looks like the leading edge right there, and it's driven by this high pressure region in Manitoba and Nunavut. Upper air maps. Let's go up to 250 millibars. This is going to be for this morning. Got a split flow. We've got a northerly polar front jet way up at the top of the map. And then we've got the main polar front jet running something like this right here. And then it comes down south again through Pennsylvania and Virginia. And then way down to the south we've got the subtropical jet. So we discussed that a little bit yesterday, given 105 knot winds there at Tampa and 95 at Lake Charles. We've also got the ridge extending from Texas up to the western Great Lakes. So conditions in this area are going to be kind of warm and summer-like. We have a pretty good trough in the western U.S. right there. So the flow out in this region is becoming cyclonic, and we're going to come under the influence of that. So as we shift from this anticyclonic pattern to this cyclonic pattern, we're going to see things start to destabilize. Some of the lapse rates will start coming up, and we're going to see precipitation chances come up in the Great Plains. And then a look at 700 millibars. This gives us an idea of where the capping is. And that fits in fairly close to where that upper level ridge is. We can see values of 10, about 8, yeah, even 8 to 11. 11 showing up there at North Platte. So that's some pretty good capping there. And as the patterns continue shifting eastward with that ridge heading on off to the east, that should bring some of the capping with it. That'll carry that out into Missouri, Arkansas, and East Texas. And you can see the cooler temperatures aloft. Those will gradually be moving towards the Great Plains, and that's going to steepen the lapse rates and reduce some of the capping. So this is probably a good time to take a look at chat. Let me get a frame set up. Got a couple of good satellite images. And here's one of Texas. This is how it looked earlier today. The dry line was located roughly like this. What you're seeing here is about 3:30 in the evening. The air mass out to the west of that dry line, you can see that it was topped by cirrus clouds. That's that striated stuff back there. However, it's also devoid of low cloud. So if you look at the low cloud elements, like this stuff right here, it's conspicuously absent. That's not a good pairing of words, conspicuously absent. It's, we'll say totally absent out to the west right there. So, yeah, the air mass out there, pretty dry. We're going to take a look at a couple scutees in that area, including Amarillo. And then out to the west, you can see the influence of the capping inversion, kind of squashing the cumulus streets a bit, and you can see a little bit of wave activity up there in Oklahoma, trying to form some transverse banding. And then rolling that forward, keep an eye on this area right here. Let me get that centered. Yeah, this area right here. And you're going to see the thunderstorms come together. And there they go. You can see the first anvils just southwest of Lubbock. And then they move across the Lubbock area and up towards the Caprock around Turkey and towards Childress. And then towards the end there, we can see a little bit of an overshoot top on some of these. Yeah, there's a good one right there. This was at 6:47 p.m. And then they continued progressing to the east, moving into southwestern Oklahoma there. Okay, let me see what we got going on in chat this evening. Pretty good crowd. Got Robert Pleasant, 60 degrees in eastern Tennessee. Christian Flock with 74 in Yukon. Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, 79. Got Electric Dog, 75 in Illinois. It's quite a change from those teens and 20s we were seeing up in that region a couple months ago. David Lumbert got the forecasting book. Great to hear that. Got Mike Estwick here and Willie Greenway. Fun with Tech. Michael Davidson, Oklahoma. Alexi Pinkson Walsh. Ron Chalfont. Mike Estwick got the strep throat there. Brett Dean, 57 out at his place. John Huntington out in Brooklyn. Adam Davis says it's looking more spring-like. Cayo Delphi is back. Jason Flood, Burl H, Megan John, 80 degrees in Minnesota. Cayo Delphi expecting severe weather on his birthday. David Moore, up there in North Texas. Looking for storms, but not looking promising right now. Brett Dean, his TV 20 seconds behind his phone. Ryan Toomey's out there in Florida also joining us. Sue M. Kijik W. reporting audio cutting out. I'll keep an eye on the chat in case other people are seeing that. Michelle Corlin is here and says it's gloomy out in her area. And Cayo Delphi is surprised how humongous the anvils are in their area coverage. I guess you're talking about Texas there? Okay. So, yeah, there's how it looked in Texas. And let me take you up to Nebraska. Got a loop for them, too. And this is how it looked earlier at about 3:42 p.m. So what do we see here? So this is one thing we're going to talk about as we do these nightly webcasts. We're going to start learning a bit about how to do a Mezzo analysis on the visible imagery. Now, one problem we have this evening is the extensive cirrus cover, and that does cause a lot of problems just before initiation time. That can really obscure some of the detail down in the lower levels, and that's stuff we really want to see. So what do we see? Well, we see a little bit of cumulus out in this area here. There's definitely a lack of low clouds. So that's indicating a weakness in the moisture field in this area. Up to the north, we've got this overcast, and this kind of solid overcast, that's suggestive of polar air. So when I look at that, I'm thinking maybe cold north winds coming down. What else do we see? A little bit of cumulus right in this area here. That's one area we're going to watch as we roll this forward. And then we can see lots of dry air out towards Akron and Scottsbluff and Alliance. So we'll roll that forward. And you can see a little bit of granular cumulus out in that area near McCook. So it's going to be hard to pick out that first bit of initiation going up, obscured by all that cirrus. But yeah, there it goes right there. That's right around just east of North Platte. And there's the anvils going up through that overcast. Looks like 3 good cells initially. And this is right around 5 p.m. Central. So now they're starting to put out some pretty good anvils. We're getting some development further down the dry line. So remember the pattern we have, something like, I think we got kind of a cold front, kind of like that right there, and then the dry line extending south. So this is somewhere close to that triple point region. And then some of the last frames we have are right about there. So a pretty well-defined anvil, and we can see a lot of waves along the top of these anvils. And looks like a little bit of forced convection or something way back here. That's going to be pretty high-based, but this is showing that we've probably got some strong forcing working on this area right here. So let's roll that and see the whole thing. Usually after the first time we play it, it stops all this flickering, but you can see that cirrus way out to the west moving in. So it's very spectacular there, and even more clouds coming in from the west there. So that's showing the extent of the troughing and height falls that we have across the Rockies. Okay, what else do we got going on? Let's pull out to the water vapor imagery and the synoptic picture right there. So you can see all the cumulus out in the Rockies right there, and in fact there's a little bit of cyclonic curvature going on in this region. So this is probably an upper level low or some very strong troughing in that region. And then out in the southwestern U.S., we can see all this unsettled air. We got a pattern like that, suggesting that this is all associated with that cyclonic flow in this region, right in this area here. So that's what's happening on satellite, and we'll take a look at the water vapor imagery. That gives us one more look at what's happening this evening. This is not sensitive to low-level moisture, but mostly mid and upper-level moisture. So obviously the higher dew points in Texas, those are not going to be showing up very well because those are near the surface. But there's likely some very dry air aloft. So now it's time to take a look at some soundings, now that we have a pretty firm idea of what's happening. And as we do that, I'm going to try taking a look at the west coast or the east coast. Out in this area, looks like some very good subsidence in that area right there. So I guess our first stop will be Charleston, South Carolina. And there we go. Showing a lot of dry air. Near the surface, it's only 30s dew points, but aloft, we're talking dew points of minus 30 to minus 60. Out in Texas, Corpus Christi, showing plenty of moisture. We've got dew points in the upper, I would say upper 50s to mid 60s, and very strong capping 700 millibar temperatures are near 10 Celsius. So to break through that with, say, a mixed 63-degree dew point, we're going to have a temperature of about, it's going to be about 97 Fahrenheit. And that will give us a lifted parcel kind of like that right there. So it's obviously not near 97 at Corpus Christi, so they're going to remain shut down this evening. Further north in Fort Worth, the sounding is looking like that, and they're also capped. Temperature at 700 millibars. It's only about 4 Celsius, but one problem is that level is just beneath the cap. So if you're only using the 700 millibar chart, that's going to kind of cut underneath the bottom of that cap, and it may give you kind of a misleading idea of what's happening. But we do have definite capping, and let's see, convective temperature. That's going to be up near about 85 to 86 Fahrenheit. And one thing that you can see here is that the elapse rates in the mid-levels of the atmosphere are not really that steep. So we haven't had the benefit of all that lift and upper-level dynamics coming out into Texas just yet. So this is kind of a result of that ridging that we've had over the area. Then going further up north, let's take a look at North Platte. Now this is an evening sounding, so they're showing pretty dry air in the low levels. But let's see what it looked like this morning. Got to set all this back. Let me get that done. Okay, so there's how North Platte looked like earlier today, and not much moisture. Looks like upper 40s dew points there. Some fairly decent lapse rates, but also quite a bit of capping. The 700 millibar temperature is running about 11 Celsius there. So obviously we've had a bit of change in that profile during the day today. Okay, so let's start looking ahead at what's going to be happening over the next few days. So we'll start out with the short term. The high-resolution rapid refresh model showing pretty good initialization on those storms around Childress. And it looks like those are going to shut down by 10 or 11 o'clock. So those are strongly diurnally driven. So those are going to be gone. Should be pretty quiet tonight. One thing that we might have to watch, you can see the models were trying to get some showers going around Lubbock around midnight. So I would probably take a closer look at that. It's got them moving out across the Cap Rock around 3 in the morning, but it doesn't really look like they do much. However, that probably shows we've got a little bit of upper level lift, maybe a weak shortwave moving across the area overnight. And then nothing going on tomorrow morning, just southerly flow in Texas. Up there in Nebraska, there's our area of thunderstorms. Those are going to be moving eastward out towards the Sioux Falls area, Sioux City, and then into northern Iowa. So this is going to be a bit of an MCS. It's going to be tracking eastward overnight, and as MCSs often do, that's going to shut down probably during the morning hours. That's partly due to it going underneath the ridge, and partly due to it decoupling from the good moisture coming up from the south. So that should be gone fairly quickly, I would think. And then we'll take a look at the NAM, starting with the dynamics. So let's see what's going on here. This is going to be the current map See that right there? Looks like a shortwave in the high plains. If we roll that backwards, you can see it a little bit better. There it is right there. So that's been producing some of the lift that's been working across Nebraska. So incredibly, they've busted through that 11 Celsius cap, and there was probably a lot of upper level help associated with that right there. Then let's see overnight, around midnight. Yep, looks like the tail end of that shortwave moving across West Texas. So maybe an outside chance of a storm there around Lubbock overnight. And then it looks like tomorrow we're kind of underneath this flat ridging. Maybe a couple of weak waves moving through the flow tomorrow. And then by late afternoon we're looking at something like this. No particularly strong upper level waves on the Great Plains. So we're going to be pretty dependent on low-level convergence and high theta E's. The jet pattern will be roughly like this right there. Jet max moving through the Baja California area. And this is going to be our next shot of energy with this shortwave rotating around the base of that trough. And then that takes us to Wednesday. So Wednesday, here's all this cyclonic flow. We've had a little bit of ridging passing across the Great Plains overnight. So this is early Wednesday. So that probably helped rebuild the cap a little bit. And let's check that out. Let's look at Oklahoma City for Wednesday morning. Okay, there's our capping inversion right there. 700 millibar temperatures, a modest 8 Celsius right there. And then it looks like we've really built up that low-level moisture. And then let me bring this up to 15Z, and we'll kind of look at the environment around, let's say, Vernon, Texas. Very good moisture. This is mid to upper 70s dew points, or I'm sorry, mid 60s dew points. There's a capping inversion, and we're probably looking at a convective temperature around, realistically, I would say, looks like about 88 Fahrenheit. Now that is pretty warm, but if we have upper level lift working across the area, that can help bring the convective temperatures down a bit. Got strong flow in the 850 millibar band right there. Looks like about 40 knots out of the south, and that's really helping to stretch out the bottom part of that hodograph. So may have a little bit of tornado potential, and it looks like our anvil level shear is kind of weak. I don't see anything in this column above 50 knots, so that's going to put us down in the HP-ish mode. So most likely the storms are going to be HP-ish to classic if they go supercell, and very little likelihood of LP structures. And then during the afternoon, there's the pattern right there. It looks like we've got only very weak influence from the upper levels, maybe a weak jet max possibly in this area, and I'm talking about that because of this channeling that it shows in the vorticity field. So there may be a little bit of upper level lift working across southwest Kansas and the Oklahoma Panhandle, but down to the south it looks pretty indeterminate. That much awaited trough is approaching the area, and it looks like that's going to be moving out into the plains early on Thursday, overnight. So that's not syncing up very well with max heating. And that's suggesting we're probably going to have some early convection in the Panhandles region, maybe some MCS activity in that area. And then after that, we're just going to have to see where the boundaries are on Thursday. See that really speckled appearance here? That's indicating in MCS early Thursday around dawn. So it probably got going out in this area, and it shifted out into this area by around rush hour, or morning rush hour on Thursday. And then for later in the day on Thursday, everything looks very channeled. There's a jet max right there. Most of the stronger energy looks like it's heading up towards the Kansas City area. Things south of Oklahoma City and Childress looks kind of indeterminate. So again, we're dependent on high theta E's and boundaries. And then we've got this troughing hanging back, which may give us some activity over the weekend. So going into Friday, that's as far as we can go, because this is the NAM. But I can see some ridging approaching Texas, and that might keep us kind of shut down early on Friday, and then after that we'll just have to see what the GFS is indicating. But definitely looks pretty active out there in the western Midwest region on Thursday and Friday. Okay, going to the other products. I guess we'll put things together with the NAM. Look at the reflectivity and everything. For Tuesday, this is the 0Z product. So it looks like we have a dry line through Kansas extending southward. The NAM going for some storms around the Salina area. And looks pretty quiet down in Oklahoma and Texas. Then going into Wednesday, this is what we've been watching for quite a while. However, the problem, as I've mentioned, is that the dynamics have kind of delayed themselves until Wednesday night. So that's going to complicate things a bit, and the NAM does have a few showers going around the Big Spring area, and also in Kansas around Salina once again. Looks like some other stuff breaking out around Wellington. And looks like by 3Z, not a whole lot going on. Looks like that activity up north of Topeka does look interesting. And then looks like we get some of that forced convection overnight. There it is right there. This is on early Thursday. And that disappears into the western Midwest region. And then going into the day on Thursday, we're just going to have to see what the theta E's and soundings and boundaries look like at that point. But going by the NAM, looks like mostly the Central Plains is going to be where development is going to be. And let's see, for Friday we're going to have to go to the GFS. So let's do that. So in summary, so far it looks like problems with a cap and with a lack of dynamics. So we've kind of backed off a little bit on the prospects for severe weather around midweek. But I'm sure some places will be seeing that. Let's go ahead and roll the GFS and see what that's got. Okay, for Tuesday, this is the max heating time. There's our dry line right there. So once again, triple point play north of Salina. So that's going to be out around Grand Island. Probably have to keep an eye on that for tomorrow. And then going into Wednesday, definitely got the moisture coming up from the south. Boundaries are looking like this. Looks like we got a front up along Interstate 70. We've got our Pacific front coming out of New Mexico. And we're going to have a dry line near the Cap Rock. Now, we could definitely have some storms go up along the Cap Rock. That's always a possibility. But the most likely location for initiation is going to be up around Salina near that triple point, and where we have the moisture impinging on that boundary. So if I was going to chase and how to make hotel reservations, I would probably be looking at the Salina area and western Oklahoma. That's more up in the air. Forecast soundings at max time look like this. Looks like some moisture deficits out in that region. So let me back that up about 3 hours and sample around Vernon. See what comes up. This is going to be around 18Z. Looks like good moisture. Okay, this looks a little bit better. I would say that cap is breakable. We're just going to have to see what things look like on Wednesday morning. So I think there's still potential along that dry line. And I'd say probably in this region. Western Oklahoma and Oklahoma Union and Vernon and whatever else is through there. That's probably what I would be keeping an eye on for Wednesday. And then for Thursday, GFS going for a little bit more widespread precip along that dry line. And it's actually the front that's coming out. See, there's that cold front coming out of the West Texas region. We've also got the dry line in place. We do have the northern boundary up to the north. But with the approach of these height falls coming in from the west, that's going to cut down on the capping quite a bit. And so we should see a little bit more widespread activity in Texas. So Thursday, that's probably going to be one of the more likely days for thunderstorm activity this week. Friday, this is getting further out there. You can see we're on the tail end of that departing system. So, I don't know. Looks kind of indeterminate at this point. GFS is going for a little bit of upslope activity around the Del Rio area. And we also have the high pressure area moving in. So that's going to clear things out, probably shut things down a little bit for Saturday. So it looks like a little bit of elevated activity around San Antonio, but we're going to be under the influence of that high pressure. And then going into Sunday, high pressure once again. You can see the Gulf is kind of shut down. Towards Monday and Tuesday, it looks like we're starting to get that southerly flow coming up once again. And the appearance of convection out in West Texas around midweek. It's really too early to call what's going to happen. But things are looking more baroclinic there in the central U.S. with this next system coming southward. And looks like we got a dry line through the panhandles and possibly some triple point action out around Dodge City and Canadian out in that area on Wednesday the 9th. And that's probably about as much as I'm going to do as far as forecasts of storms. And then towards the very end, we've got a very deep system coming in onshore on the west coast. That looks very potent. And that will move towards the northern plains. So that'll be something to keep an eye on there. So we're talking about the 14th and 15th of May. And quite an extensive Pacific high coming in the backside right there. And quite a wound-up system up there in Montana and the Dakotas. Now, of course, the main baroclinic zone is going to be out towards the Great Lakes out in this area here. But we've got this really wound-up occlusion up there in Montana. So who knows, with all that downslope flow coming into the south side of that, there may be a little bit of cold core convection out there in that region. Okay, one last look at Nebraska. And as you can see, the tail end storm is a place to be. We've dropped a lot of the severe warnings in Nebraska. These cells not looking too good either. So we got this one little hailer down there near Broken Bow. So that's continuing to push, I think, to the east-northeast there towards Ord. And maybe somebody's out there getting some good pictures. Let me take one last look at the chat here. Let's see here, a little bit of discussion about Pickle 3. Electric Dog is asking, why aren't we at 50 likes yet? Yeah, let's see. How many likes did we get? I don't even see where it is on my screen. But for those of you hitting the like button, I definitely appreciate that. And I believe that helps us appear higher in the search rank listings. Robert Pleasant says, what software do you use to show the slides? I'm just using a web browser here, together with OBS and Sony Vegas. Severe weather instructional videos from Gary England. He was the chief meteorologist. Yeah, he was in that Twister movie too. James Spann, yeah, I remember him on KDFW down there in Dallas. I think that's where he started in the big leagues, and then he moved to Alabama there. James Spann, yeah, he's pretty good. And let's see here. SPC backed off on the severe weather for his area, Carl Berghoff. Ryan is asking if May 3rd, he's thinking May 3rd may be the hot day. And Carl Berghoff says surface boundary went through the late afternoon, winds back to the southeast, even though the HRR did not resolve it. Okay, well, that's about all I got for tonight. We'll check things out tomorrow, and I think we may have a little bit more interesting severe weather as that moisture continues working north. So we'll check things out, and one thing I'm going to be doing, I'm going to start throwing journal stuff at you. The journals, the AMS and all that. So we're going to learn a little bit about severe weather from those, and you'll be able to pick up on your knowledge. So we'll start doing that tomorrow. Hope you all have a good evening, and we'll see you in 23 hours and 15 minutes. Take care.